Maggie stared out the window of her little corner store, watching the people of Milford pass by on Main Street. Shoppers, workers, students, families. They all moved with purpose down the tree-lined sidewalks. The sky was blue with wispy cirrus clouds, just enough to provide dappled shade from the pleasant summer sun. At 82, Maggie had seen it all from behind this window. This store and this corner had been her whole world for the past 60 years. She knew every face, every name in this small rural town. She had watched generations grow up before her eyes, seen people come and go, followed the joys and heartbreaks of an entire community. There wasn't a single family she didn't know intimately. Milford was a town woven together by a patchwork of love stories, and Maggie held the threads. Countless couples had met or grown their love inside the four walls of her store. How many nervous young men, shaking with anticipation, had she helped pick out the perfect bouquet or box of chocolates or sparkling ring to win the heart of their sweetheart? How many giggling groups of schoolgirls had pored over the magazine racks, dreaming of their futures? How many wrinkled hands of devoted husbands and wives had she watched reach out to each other over her counter, love still shining bright in their eyes after decades together? This store had been more than a store. It was the heart of Milford, the center around which the wheel of life turned in this little corner of the world. And Maggie was its keeper. But Maggie was tired now. Her bones ached and her mind wandered. After her husband Joe passed away 10 years ago, the days felt longer, her sense of purpose a little dimmer. Their love story had been the greatest joy of her life. But like all stories, it had reached its final chapter much too soon. Maggie knew her own story was nearing its end now too. She turned from the window as the bell over the door chimed. In walked Art, the mailman, right on schedule. Art was her most regular customer and the closest thing to family Maggie had left these days. "Morning, Miss Maggie." Art greeted her with a wide smile. Despite being in his 70s himself, Art still had a youthful twinkle in his eye and a spring in his step. "Beautiful day out there today." "It sure is, Art." "The usual?" Maggie was already reaching for Art's daily paper and usual black coffee. "You know it. Although one of these days I may just surprise you and shake things up." Art chuckled as he leaned against the counter. "I'll believe that when I see it," Maggie replied with a smirk, handing over the items. "You're nothing if not a creature of habit. Guilty as charged. But hey, there's something to be said for consistency. 52 years I've been walking my route, and I swear these old legs could do it blindfolded by now. Rain, shine, or snow, you can count on Arthur P. McGinley to get the job done." Maggie smiled. There was an immense comfort in Art's steadfast presence in her life. In a world that spun faster each day, he was her rock, as sturdy and unchanging as an ancient oak. "Well, you're a treasured institution around here, Art. I couldn't imagine Milford without you. Likewise, Miss Maggie. You and this shop, you're the glue that holds this town together. The stories you must have rattling around in that head of yours." Art shook his head in wonder. Maggie felt a swell of emotion rise in her throat. If Art only knew how many of those stories starred him in a leading role. Just then, the bell chimed again and in bounded Natalie, fresh-faced and bright in her yellow sundress, pulling her young daughter by the hand. "Maggie, thank goodness you're here," Natalie exclaimed breathlessly. "I'm in desperate need of flour and sugar. Promised Emma I'd make cookies for her first day of kindergarten tomorrow, and I'm clean out of stock." Natalie had been coming into Maggie's store since she was a little girl not much older than Emma was now. Maggie had watched her grow into a beautiful, vivacious woman, fall in love with her high school sweetheart Stephen, get married in a fairy tale white dress, welcome her babies. Where had the time gone? "Of course, dear. I have just what you need," Maggie replied warmly, already collecting the items. "But don't you worry if those cookies don't turn out. You know what Emma will remember? The love you baked into them." Natalie squeezed Maggie's hand gratefully. "You always know just what to say. I don't know what this town would do without you." There it was again. The thought of all these lives, these beating hearts, continuing on without her, made Maggie's chest tighten. This store, this role of hers, it meant everything. How could she possibly leave it behind? As if sensing her thoughts, Art placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You okay, Miss Maggie? You look like you have something heavy on your mind." Maggie blinked back the tears that threatened and patted Art's hand. "Oh, I'm fine. Just feeling sentimental in my old age." She deflected with a weak smile. "You better get a move on before that route of yours delivers itself." Art didn't seem convinced but knew better than to push. "All right then. You take care now, you hear?" With a tip of his cap and a wink, he was out the door and on his way. The rest of the day passed in the usual bustle and flow of customers and chores. Maggie tried to shake off her melancholy mood and lose herself in the work she loved. But the thoughts lingered like early morning mist that wouldn't quite burn away. As evening approached and Maggie was closing up shop, the bell chimed one last time. In walked Miriam, the young woman who helped out part-time when the work became too much for Maggie on her own. Miriam's presence was like a burst of fresh spring air, all unbridled energy and endless possibility. At 22, she had her whole future stretched out before her, ripe with untold love stories yet to unfold. "Evening, Miss Maggie," Miriam called out cheerily as she flipped the sign on the door to closed. "Thought I'd pop in and see if you needed any help after closing. Don't you have better things to do than spending time with an old lady?" Maggie asked wryly, though she was privately glad for the company. "Thought you had a date tonight with that Sam fellow." "Not till later," Miriam replied breezily as she began wiping down the counter. "Besides, I like spending time with you. Hearing your stories, it's like a window into a whole other world." Maggie sighed, suddenly feeling the full weight of her years settle upon her. "That's what I am, Miriam. A window into a world that is slowly fading away. The time will come sooner rather than later when I'll be nothing more than stories." Miriam stopped her work and fixed Maggie with a penetrating stare, her gray eyes shining silver. "Isn't that what we all become in the end? Stories? Each of our lives is a love story, the pen passed from one hand to the next. Your story has touched so many other stories. You're a part of all of us." Maggie was struck speechless by the wisdom of one so young. In Miriam's gaze she saw her own reflection stretched across time. The hopeful maiden, the contented wife, the wizened widow. A sudden peace washed over her. "You're right," Maggie said softly. "I think I'm finally ready to write the next chapter." She took a deep breath, deciding to voice the thought that had been growing louder in her mind these past months. "Miriam, what would you say if I offered you the store?" Miriam nearly dropped the rag in her hand. What? "Maggie, I don't know what to say. I'm honored, truly. But are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything," Maggie said firmly, taking Miriam's young hands into her own wrinkled ones. "This store, it's not just a place. It's a beacon, a keeper of love stories. It needs a new storyteller. Someone with an open heart, who values preserving the past while nurturing the future. I can't imagine anyone better than you." Tears sprang to Miriam's eyes as she embraced Maggie tightly. "I would be humbled to carry on your legacy," she whispered, "to be the new thread that binds the tales together." Maggie smiled into Miriam's shoulder, joy and sadness intermingling into a poignant ache in her heart. She knew that her own story was not over, but a new chapter was undoubtedly beginning. Over the next few months, Maggie taught Miriam all the secrets, the rhythms, the well-worn grooves of running the store. Every day she felt lighter, as if she was gently releasing her grip on a cherished book, getting ready to place it lovingly on the shelf. On Maggie's last day, they threw a grand party right there in the store. It seemed all of Milford squeezed into the aisles, lining up to share a hug or a memory. There were smiles and tears in equal measure as the townsfolk celebrated the woman who had been a quiet constant in the background of their lives for so long. Art was the last to approach Maggie as the party started to wind down. She knew this would be the hardest goodbye of all. "I don't know how I'll handle not seeing your face each morning," Art said gruffly, uncharacteristically serious. "You've been my true north. In a day full of change and uncertainty, you were always there, steady as the rising sun." Maggie swallowed the lump in her throat. "Well, pretty soon you won't just have to see me each morning. What do you say to having breakfast with me every day?" The question slipped out almost involuntarily, surprising them both. Art's face crinkled into a slow smile, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "Why, Miss Maggie, it would be my greatest pleasure." He bowed gallantly and placed a whiskery kiss on her hand. The gesture made Maggie feel like a schoolgirl again, almost giddy. Maybe her own love story still had some pages left to be written. On the first morning of her retirement, Maggie awoke for once without the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. She dressed slowly and made her way downstairs to her quiet kitchen. She had just poured herself a cup of tea when there was a knock at the door. She opened it to find Art standing on her porch, holding a bouquet of yellow flowers and grinning like a fool. "Morning, Miss Maggie. Hope you don't mind. I thought I'd surprise you and shake things up a bit today," he said with a wink. Maggie laughed, bright and clear as a bell. "You never stop surprising me, Art." She put the flowers in a vase, marveling at their sunny hue and delicate petals. Yellow, what a happy color it was. The color of sunshine, of youth, of hope, of all the stories yet to bloom. Hand in hand, Maggie and Art walked to the corner store, ready for Miriam to pour their coffees and for their next chapter to begin.